A very good evening, everyone. So, I feel so glad to meet you all here and the online audience for today as well. In this very cold and strangely weather bearing day, I'm very happy you all are here, all prepared and set for the debate. So, to all our online audience who haven't been here before, I would like to just give an introduction about me and about the session we are going to go live about now. So, my name is Rasha Hifzul Rahman. I work as a law and debating coach at Pufferfish. And today's live is all about doing the evaluation debate of the debate workshops we conduct for 2 days. So, these are the students from the second workshop of our venture, and they are all set here after learning all the technicalities about debate and enhancing their skills in debating, and here today to perform their final evaluation debate. Talking a little about debating, so we call it debating a life skill workshop. The reason behind that was I do not feel the debating skill is only to be learned by those who participate in debate competitions typically, but rather it is to be considered a life skill because debating helps us organize our thoughts and express the thoughts in the right way, persuasively and convincingly, which I feel is an essential life skill to each and every human being to interact with another human being. So, with that little intro today, let us dive into the debate without a further ado. So, for all the debaters and the evaluator today, just a quick info about the points of information you're going to ask in the session today. So, as we have learned in the class, during the protected times, you won't be able to ask points of information from the speaker. So, about the protected time, I will be notifying you all in the chat box. Once the first minute protected time is over, I'll dropping a message in the chat box. And once the last 1 minute protected time is starting, I'll again drop a message there. So, be mindful about that. Apart from the protected times, in all the other times, you all can raise your points of information rather by unmuting and asking points of information, please, or rather just raising your hand. So once the speaker notices that, he should definitely address that either by saying yes or saying no. So all the very best. Coming up with the topic for the debate session today, ladies and gentlemen, and all the lovely audience today online, we are going to debate about governments are responsible to tackle global warming and not the common people. So, Mr. Savino and Atif will be arguing for the side proposition, supporting the motion that governments are responsible to tackle global warming and not the common people. And from the team opposition, Mr. Harun and Mr. Fadil will be arguing against, saying not the government is responsible for global warming, but the common people. So, one last time, wishing you all the very best, boys and girls here. Let us start up the session. So I cordially invite the first speaker from the side proposition, Mr. Savina Somasiri, to start up the debate representing his side proposition.
Your Honor and my dear friends, I am the first speaker of the team proposition, and my topic is governments are responsible to tackle global warming, not the common people. How does global warming work? Because of the things that the people do, it leads to global warming, and global warming will lead to extreme events such as droughts, uh, glaciers melting, and tornadoes, and species extinction. And all these things will lead to such consequences such as famine, starvation, and hunger. Yeah, so, Your Honor, global warming is a huge problem which is going throughout the earth. So, if people get together, the percentage of them trying to find the solution for this is low. But if the government works as a team and tries to find and tries to tackle and find a problem, the chances of finding a solution is higher. So, Your Honor, that's a reason that the governments must be responsible to tackle global warming. And I'll move on to my second point. As Vodafone Institution for Society and Communication has done their survey, and they say people across the globe see national governments as primarily reason for global warming, and the percentage of the people that have been agreed for this is 54%, no, I guess, for Fadil. Uh, so, so the percentage is 54%. So, as the public opinion, uh, that is another reason that the people must agree that the other authorities must agree that uh, the government should be responsible for global warming. And I'll move to my third point. We know that the governments, all the governments aren't the same. Like some countries aren't that rich and they don't have the proper economy. But like every single government has their authorities and ministries, Your Honor. So common people doesn't have all those authorities and ministries. So the government, since the government has all these authorities and ministries, they could they could they will find a solution for it, but they are working and they have done a particular percentage of it. And so as the government has the all the facilities and all those things, the government must have the responsibility of tackling the problem global warming. And Your Honor, the five ways that the government has confront climatic changes are protecting and restoring key ecosystems, supplying small agricultural products, promoting green energy, combat short-lived climate pollutions, and bet on adaptations, not just mitigation, and international enter all international arguments. So all these things are only for the government. So your honor, the people doesn't have the chance to approach these particular things, but the governments have. And Your Honor, I would love to say that most of the rich countries and the countries which have high economies are the ones which much the ones which have done the most harm to our planet, and in case of global warming too. So Your Honor, they are also the ones which have found solutions to this. Your Honor, so that's another reason that the government must get the chance, because if the people are trying to find a solution, they won't have the proper uh, leadership and they won't have the proper techniques and stuff to do it. And if the people works do that thing and they don't try to tackle the problem, and if they have the higher chance of failing it, so if they fail, it will be a huge problem for our planet and our future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Savinu Somaseri. And now it's time to invite the first speaker from the team opposition, Mr. Harun. Harun, you'll get 7 minutes to speak, and your time starts now.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, global warming has a major threat to the whole Earth today, and it is a rapid increase in the Earth's temperature due to the greenhouse gases that are trapped in the Earth's atmosphere. Out of this, carbon dioxide stays the longest in the Earth's atmosphere, and I'm here to address today the question, is the government only enough to tackle the global warming? So, global warming is like a multi decade challenge that needs a solution and the support of all the people, because I'm saying change can happen only when individuals take action, because there's no other way. It doesn't start with the individuals. And mainly global warming uh, happens because of the lifestyle that we have, because uh, even the smallest thing can produce greenhouse gases, uh, like food. So food, you might ask why food? Because food needs to grow and process, transport and distributed, prepared, consumed, and sometimes disposed of. Each of these steps create greenhouse gases that trap the sun's heat and contribute to climate change. So according to United Nations, about a third of all the humans, human caused generate greenhouse gases emission is linked to food. And new finding the new finding shows that more than a third, like 34% of all the man-made greenhouse gases emission are generated by food system. They also show that food generates on average 2 tons of carbon dioxide emission per person annually. And this is uh, this is one of this is a very important thing to know, because food is like a common thing, and it's such a small thing, and it can still cause global warming. And one of the second point I would like to make is that deforestation.
Excuse me,
Deforest,
Harun. But
yes.
food is not just consumed by people. Even politicians consume food, and but without food, even our ancestors consumed food, and that hasn't made any kind of harm in their time. So how would it make any kind of harm to the planet in this time? So how is food dangerous? Do you have proof that food emits carbon dioxide?
Yeah, because in the first point I said that in United States, they said that a third of human cost generate greenhouse gases. And another thing I said is that some new findings have showed that a third of, like 34% of all men made greenhouse gases emission are generated by food system. And you said that that in the olden days as well, that people eat food, and how come that that time and this time, right? So this present day, I think um, it's not just the food, it's about how they process the food, and the transportation, mainly the transportation, distribution, how it's prepared, consumed. These things might also cause the greenhouse gases. Okay. And so I'm going to my second point, which is deforestation. So forests and trees store carbon when they are degrading or completely cleared. Example, like in a fire or a process referred to as deforestation, that stored carbon but has a potential to be released back into the atmosphere as carbon, and sometimes contribute to climate change. The direct causes of deforestation are like agricultural
Excuse
expansion
me, Harun.
and wood extraction. Yes, yes, Atif.
So, so isn't most of deforestation done by the government and not by the people? Governments are the people who cut down most of the trees, right? They do it for they do it to build buildings and stuff.
Yeah, even
So
if
isn't the government responsible for it, not the people?
yeah, even if it's the government, it's basically for the human needs. And humans, mainly we are the ones who with carelessly like go and request these lands and all. So we must have a limit as well. If we don't, like, purchase those areas, or we don't even like interact with those areas, the government won't show much interest as well because of our interest only. They are also cutting down trees and clearing the areas. And according to the World Network, deforestation accounts for about 50% of global carbon emission. Industrial animal agriculture is also the leading cause of deforestation. And I would like to end by saying climate change is like deforestation has no border. It will not stop before the specific islands, and the whole of the international communities here has the shoulder responsibility to build a sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harun. And now it's time to call upon the second speaker from the side proposition, and that is going to be Mr. Atif Aslam. Atif, you got 7 minutes.
Thank you, Shusha. My dear respected judges and my dear friends, governments are responsible for causing global warming, and they should be the ones to clean it. I'll tell you why they are responsible. Generating power. Almost all the power in every country is generated by government, and generating electricity and is done using by burning fossil fuels. There are other ways to do it, but governments use these ways because it's easier and it's more profitable for them. And manufacturing goods. Governments let factories There are governments that let factories cause air pollution, but they should they are the ones who should bring a rule saying that these kinds of if you are doing these kinds of production, you should not emit this kind of gas. You should somehow contain it. But governments don't do anything like that. So people the like people don't have the power to uh, make any change. Yeah, Fadil, go ahead.
So, Atif, you mentioned that the government uses electricity, like they produce electricity through carbon emissions. But don't you think that it mostly depends on what country it is? Because usually governments cannot exist without the people's help. So, don't you think that it's some of the people's fault for not paying their taxes in time to generate electricity in a more eco-friendly way?
No, they spend like they can't. The people not the people pay, even if people don't pay taxes in time, they could just cut off the electricity and say, if you pay your tax, we'll give you electricity. And like there's a way, right? So they charge an electricity bill for a reason, right? With that electricity bill, they could use solar to power up. They could use solar to give us energy. They could use water to hydropower to give us energy. Why aren't they doing that? So I like almost 75% of the world's carbon emission is caused by fossil burning of fossil fuel and wood. Next is powering bill using transportation. That's done by almost everyone. But don't you think there's a way to reduce that? Government should provide people with the provide people with less less harmful things to the less harmful methods of transportation to the environment. So that would at least make a change, right? So I'll relate to an incident that happened in past few days in Sri Lanka. We have had a massive no Fadil, sorry, we have had a massive air damage in our country. Our air has been really bad, but the main reason for this is air due to the winds, the chemical air from India is coming to Sri Lanka, and Don't you think the government is part responsible for this? The wind is natural, I get it, but the factories that let out the air, the government should uh, tell the factories, should give a warning to the factories that they should contain the air. If they don't contain the air, it's not just gonna harm the people in that country or in that area. It's gonna harm everyone in the world. And don't you think it's very harmful to the people, not just living in that area? The most many people die because of this. Government should realize this. Governments are not really realizing this. And building, they governments construct buildings. They are government buildings. They can make them in an eco-friendly way rather than making it in a harmful way to the environment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Atif. Fadil, do you have a point of information to ask?
Yes, ma'am. So about
Atif,
the
since you,
point,
I'm
okay.
sorry, Atif, since you have 2 more minutes in your prescribed time, if you wish, you can take up the question of Fadil.
Okay, what's your question, Fadil?
So my question is that since you're saying that government buildings are made by the government in an uneco-friendly manner, what solutions do you think that can be implemented instead of that to construct buildings? And aren't government buildings or the services that the governments render usually done for the people?
Although they are done for the people, Fadil, governments can make them in a eco-friendly way, right? There are recycled blocks they can use. Or governments have the power to do that. The people don't. Okay, so how would the people take any kind of action for that? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Atif. And with that, I'm here to call upon the second speaker, the final speaker of the debate today from the team opposition, and it is going to be Fadil Irshan. Fadil, you've got 7 minutes again, and your time starts now.
Good evening, respected judges, members of the opposing team, and the audience. My name is Fadil Irshan, and today I am here to propose the reasons to whether the government is enough to tackle global warming. And your honors, I have 2 points to present today. Number one is electricity generation, and number two is CFC gases being released. So the reason why I'm mentioning electricity generation, even though that has been mentioned before, is because even though it's still being generated in an unfriendly manner and unfavorable manner for the environment, it's still used to benefit the people. And most electricity is still generated by burning coal and gas, as the previous speaker said, like powerful greenhouse gases. But don't you think that that could be fixed if people also render their support and taxes to fight them? Because your honor, governments cannot exist without the people's support. So how can people expect for the government not to work and to act according to their own if they don't also support the government? So the people are also responsible to tackle climate change as electricity is generated to benefit them. And even though we are still moving towards like better renewable energy sources in different countries, that's already been implemented. The damage has already been done, and in order to undo it, the people must contribute to tackle them. And point number two is about CFC gases. So CFC gases are also part of greenhouse gases that contribute to global warming. So the main reason why these CFC gases are released to the atmosphere are mostly due to refrigerators and air conditioners. Refrigerants are most common emit of CFC gases. So if the coolant used in refrigerators, air conditioners, cars are not properly disposed, it will leak CFCs in the atmosphere. Either the coolant will evaporate or get in the soil, contaminating both with CFC. And your honors, just like how many countries follow the principle of equal but differentiated responsibilities for climate change, mostly global warming, people also should feel that they should like responsible that, because yes, the government is responsible to tackle climate change along with the people, but the government is nothing without the people. And the small mistakes done by big people have contributed to an even larger problem. And according to research by scientists, about 7 billion grams of CFC has been released per year. And this is the reason why people also must get involved with the government to tackle climate change. Because the problem created by almost 8 billion people can't be corrected just by a merry band of 193 governments. Everyone must get involved, because just imagine like 100 people versus one person. That's how this equivalent to. Just say on average, the government has about 1 million people working for them. 193 million is nothing towards 8 billion. And now I'm going to move on to rebuttals, to which the first speaker of the proposition said that people are not capable of fighting them. So my answer to that is, like as I said before, government cannot exist without people. And saying that people are not capable is like disrespecting, like the way that you disrespect people, because people are the ones that help the government do things that they have to do. And another thing which was said by the first speaker is that government has no authority, so the people have no authority, and that authority, and that can be said because people are the person that gave up authority to the government. So the reason that the government is still doing is because people has given them the authority. So what I am saying is that people could help the government make a change. They could either stop using vehicles that emit gases, or they could even use bicycles. Bicycles are way better way of traveling more than other vehicles, because yes, other vehicles are faster, but bicycles help people also like increase in their physical fitness. Why isn't that being done? Instead, the government is being blamed for everything. Yes, it's true that government should be blamed for certain things. I'm not against that, but there are certain things that the people also have to realize that they have to do. And this mistake is not only created by the government. Yes, the government are also the people have made this mistake, like the previous speaker of the three proposition said, the factories that are done by the government. But your honor, another thing which should be said is that like I said, the 8 billion people, they are the ones that have mostly caused this than the government, because those people, like I said, having release CFC gases and uses like unfavorable vehicles for the environment. So, and another thing which was said, that rich countries governments have found solutions. Now, I have one question, which is that have the solutions been working? Because lately we've seen climate change that have struck so far. Like the Antarctica right now is melting. So how can it be said that rich countries' solutions will only work if they haven't even been properly like worked it? So on a in conclusion, I would like to say that people should take a stand and tackle global warming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fadil. And with that, the main speakers of the debate have completed their speeches, and now it's time to listen to the summary speeches. So, one speaker from each side proposition and opposition, will be presenting a 1 minute long summary speech. So, I first call upon the summary speaker from the side opposition. Either Harun or Fadil can come up with their 1 minute summary speech. Yes, please go ahead, Fadil.
So, as mentioned by the first speaker of our team, Harun, that the people have that the people are the main people that have mostly supported these carbon emissions, which have um, harmed the environment. So, as to what he said, he has mentioned the points of deforestation and food production, and points which I mentioned before about. Global warming is about electricity generation and CFC gases being released due to the unbalanced use of the people of air conditioners and refrigerators.
All right. Thank you, Fadil. And now it's time to call upon the summary speaker from the side proposition. Either Savino or Atif can go for it. Yes, please go ahead.
So the first speaker of the team proposition spoke about how does the global warming work, and yeah, that was his first point, and the second point was uh, as Vodafone Institution for Society and Communications has done the survey, and what is included in their survey, and uh, uh, after that, he spoke about 5 ways the government has confront climatic changes. Then, after that, the second speaker of the proposing team spoke about why does the government why governments are responsible for tackling global warming, and what is the cause of global warming. Thank you.
Thank you, Savinu. So thereby we officially close our debate since both the main and summary speeches have been done. And now, before I go for my evaluation and the verdict, we have one external evaluator today from our same class, and that is Junior Fishazmia Salmi. So let us hear her evaluation first, and then I'll be going for my verdict and evaluation both. Asmia, the floor is yours.
Jim's. Good. So, as today's debate was about global warming and deciding whether the government or the people are responsible and taking part in it. On all the debaters' points, it is said that the first speaker from proposition took all the points very clearly and explained each of it, and also used the example from the survey and also said it properly. And then the proposition team's second speaker also gave an example of what global warming is, and yeah, and the cause of it, and yeah, and gave proper examples, and also questioned yeah, and also questioned the authorities that the government has stronger power than the public. Then the proposition team's first speaker explained that what global warming exactly is, and then also used the example of the UN's information given about the greenhouse gases, and also yeah, and also told that deforestation is one main reason, and yeah, rebutted that also. And then the proposition second speaker also came up with the points of why global warming happens and why the people are responsible for it, and also rebutted the points from the propositions and made it clear, uh, yeah, and made it clear that global warming is done, uh, yeah, is done because the people's support is not as equal as what government is giving. So, on my point of view and all my points collected, I say that it's that government is helping global warming and trying to cure it. Right? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Asmia, for that brief evaluation on all the speeches done by the speakers here. So, how do you all think? First, before coming into my evaluation and verdict, I want to hear it from you all first about how well you feel you did. Fadil? Yes.
So I feel that I was going a bit too fast.
Okay. What else?
And I feel like that my evidences were not enough. Even though I had evidences, it was not enough to what I spoke about. And repetition of points.
Okay. All right. Savina, what's your own reflection on you?
I think in arting, the amount of rebuttals which are done is low, so that might be a little downside. Yeah, and that's what I think.
That's a good reflection. Atif, how do you feel about your speech and your team's performance?
I feel that my speech, I didn't do any rebuttals, but it wasn't
Okay.
as good as I expected it to be.
Okay.
And my team's performance was
Guys, can you hear him well? There's a bit of a glitch, right? That's fine. Harun, are we having you here? So I believe he's facing the network difficulty too. That's all right. So the reflections you all came up with was quite fine. I mean, quite similar of what I have found out as well. I've done this clumsy chart concentrating all the points you've been telling. So I show this because every time you should understand the judge of a debate goes through an equal difficult task just as you all, you know. So the first reason is one, we have to listen very carefully without any distractions. Number two, sometimes some speakers will not pinpointing their main points. You know, this is my first point, second point. Not all speakers will do that. In many cases, what a judge of a debate has to do is we have to go around the bush and find out what the point that speaker is trying to say, you know. So in that case, it is going to turn a bit disadvantageous for the speakers, if I may say so, because judge will spend more time on understanding your point. After that only he'll try to get convinced, so he'll try to see if it is convinced, if your point is convincing or persuasive. He'll get more time to go around the bush to understand the point. I mean, understand the main thing you're going to say, you're trying to say rather. So that is one of the disadvantage I was able to see throughout the debate, commonly in both the teams. So I had to pinpoint that first before I come into individual evaluations. Second thing, the topic, the motion. Do you remember I said some kind of a tragedy can happen in usual debates where the teams will misunderstand the motion and talk about a totally different topic that will turn disadvantages for their own original topic, things like that. Tragedies like that will also happen. Do you all remember I've said you so? So what I witnessed today is a sort of that tragedy. It is not as severe as such, but still there was a confusion. Let me say why. So, what is the topic of today's debate? It is, if I may repeat, governments are responsible to tackle global warming and not the common people. I want you all to carefully read that again. Governments are responsible to tackle global warming and not the common people. The word tackle is extremely important. Shortly before the debate, I had a phone call from Saminu to get this clarified. And I believe all the other debaters would have been clarified as well. But I had disappointments. The original meaning of the debate is the proposition should have argued that governments are responsible to maintain or protect the environment from global warming or prevent global warming. They have more responsibilities to take measures to control global warming. That is the meaning of it. And the opposition should have said not only the government but the common people have the equal responsibility to take actions against global warming. The reason why I found disappointments was some of y'all understood the topic as talking about governments are responsible for global warming and the common people are responsible for global warming. You know, there is a difference between responsible for something and being responsible to tackle something. Do you get me? So that was a bit of a confusion there. So in some of your speeches, I was able to connect what you're trying to say to the original motion. In some of your points, I could not establish that connection. So, right. So let me now come to the first speaker's reflection of mine into his speech. That is Savinu Somasiri from Proposition. First, Savinu mainly had 3 points, right, which he pinpointed very well. First one is he said government has the power, which people do not, right? They have the authority to tackle it. They have government departments and other institutions established to take measures, to take action. So that is one point. Second one is he spoke about the international connection sort of a thing and the networks the states has with each other through government treaties and agreements, which can play as an advantage in terms of preventing global warming, number two. And number three, he talked about the government playing the role of a leader and the government utilizing techniques to prevent global warming. The scope the government can get going in terms of establishing or utilizing those techniques is far better than the people. That was his third point, right? So it was fine. The points were very clear, Savino. But some of the, some of the points, some of the things that you can work on were first one, I could see a bit lack of confidence. So I feel it was because of the lack of structuring of your speeches. Because whenever you be a bit unprepared or you don't have a proper structure to hang on to, in those times, the less of confidence or lacking of that bravery to come up with your points very strongly, it will go lacking. So that was first thing. And second thing, in all his speeches, not only Savino, in all his speeches, what I could see was you were talking about which causes and factors can lead up to global warming. That was given a bit more importance rather than saying why the government should be the main person to tackle global warming. The environmental problem, the issues of environmental pollution were given more significance rather than talking about why government is the big guy or the common people is the big guys to handle global warming. Do you get me? Am I making sense to you all? That was one thing. That is for Savino and also for other speakers as well. Number two. And third thing, Savino, there was no a proper opening, if I could say. You remember the first impression, the lesson we learned. So I was expecting some impressive first impressions in your speech, just as you all did in the class. So it was not there. I mean, it does not meet my expectation rather. So I really feel you could work on it. Okay. So that's it for Savino. And now coming to Atif, the second speaker of proposition. Um, as I could see a bit of a network problem with Atif. Until he comes back, I think I can go with the first speaker from opposition. I can give the evaluation to him, and that is going to be Harun. So in Harun's overall speech, there was one main point which was talked about over and over again, and that is individuals taking action can create the change. It was a very valid point, but the supporting points he came up with to support this main argument was a bit distant to his main point. So he spoke about deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, and he repeated that the people are the factors or cause behind these things. Hence, they are the people to be responsible, right? So the distance that was there to connect the subpoints and the main argument we were trying to build up was a bit difficult for me. The distance that was there was a bit difficult for me to analyze and come to a rational decision. And also, I wish you could have taken up more rebuttals to Savino's points, which finally had been playing disadvantages in your overall evaluation, Harun. There have been no rebuttal speeches, no rebuttal points done to all the Savino's points. Because of that, up to your speech, Savino's all 3 points were standing, and you had only 1 point to support your side. That was a bit of a thing you had to work on with, right? And then, again, same as Savino, I was expecting a bit strong, impressive introduction to your speech. That was again not there. And then you had good, reliable evidence about UN reports and all. But then again, I couldn't directly connect those evidences with your main point you're trying to establish. That is saying individuals taking action will create change. And I appreciate that you took points of information bravely. It was a good impression on you from the point of view of a judge. That could really a good impression. And that goes the other way for Savino. I missed that point to be noted. You had a point of information, if I'm not wrong, right, Savino? But you did not accept, I think. For usually debates, the judges expect at least 1 point of information to be taken by the speaker, since it shows their bravery, confidence, and their preparedness. So that is 1 point to be appreciated on the side of Harun. And then again, don't repeat your points, Harun, right? And finally, do not rely on anything written down. It's okay you have your points jotted down, but do not completely rely on it. So number one, it gives you a bad impression on the part of the judge. Number two, once a question is shot on you, like in the form of points of information, right after answering that question, you won't be able to continue what you were saying because the structure is now collapsed. The structure has become different because of the in between points of information. So you could not continue the flow of the speech. So that will play a very weak role there. So do not completely rely on the points that you have written down. That is one kind of concern of me. And now moving into the second speaker of proposition, Mr. Atif Aslam. First thing I have to say is, I loved your intro, Atif. You started with a question saying, why do I think government should be responsible or sort of a thing. That the starting with the question was impactful. So appreciations for that. And then I could see you throughout the debate asking points of information whenever you could, utilizing the opportunity. That was again appreciable because judges see the debaters who make points of information as confident. So that is a good thing. And then you answered the points of information well too. So the handling of points of information was good. So credits for you. And yeah, these were the extra comments I had to say. And now coming to your main points you came up with. In your overall speech, Atif, I could gain one main thematic point, and that was you saying government is responsible to tackle this because it does more environmental pollution. If I'm not wrong, this was the point I could understand by going around all your sub-arguments, right? Since government does more pollution through power generation, through inefficient transport systems and all, they should be responsible to tackle them. But it was okay, Atif. It was a valid point. The problem was, which went problematic, was you concentrated more on the second half of this main point, which is government does more pollution. You spoke about it very clearly, very deeply with valid evidences, but rather you missed to give significance to the first part of that point, which is to say government is responsible to tackle, to take care, to prevent global warming, to take care of taking actions to prevent global warming. Am I making sense, Atif? Is it clear for you?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, hope it is. So, throughout the speech, you maintained a good phase of speech. The speed was very fine, and the tone of the speech was very clear. The way we went, the way you went, went with the flow of the speech made me curious to listen. But the only disadvantage was that you missed to argue or signify the first part of your point more, where you should have spoken more about governments are responsible to tackle global warming more than the common people, right? And now finally, coming to Sir Fadil Ishan's speech representing the side opposition. So first one, coming to the overall comments I have for you, Fadil. You asked several POIs, which gave me a good impression of you as a debater, number one. And number two, structure was good in terms of you introduced your main 2 points at the beginning. So I could write down those main 2 points and then track down those points. That was good. But again, a good, impressive first introduction part was missing in your speech as well. So if I can remember well, in the last time's FB live debate, you did a pretty good job with your introduction, but this time it did not meet up to my expectations, to be very honest. And then Fadil, to be accurate, if I'm not wrong, Fadil is the only speaker here who did rebuttals. So I feel the absence of rebuttals on the side proposition was making your side a bit weaker in terms of rebuttals, right? That is the overall reflection. And now coming to the points again. Fadil had the same issue too. So the one main point he went around supporting it with all his sub-arguments was government cannot exist if the people do not support. So that was the main thematic argument as I could understand, which he supported with all his sub-arguments. And the same reflection I saw in Fadil's speech was the same as Atif's one. So I feel like you should have signified how and why common people can tackle global warming more efficiently, or why and how common people's contribution becomes very important when it comes to preventing global warming, rather than talking about common people are responsible to cause more environmental pollution. Am I making sense, Fadil? Overall, it makes sense because the common people contribute to more environmental pollution. Ultimately, or as a result, they should be the responsible guys to prevent global warming. Yeah, but the concentration, according to today's debate motion, should have been more on saying they have the responsibility and these are the reasons. And the main thematic point of view, which is government cannot exist if the people do not support, is a very valid point. You could have supported it with more evidences, practical examples that you could see around you in Sri Lanka to make sure that without people, the government cannot exist. You could have picked up more examples with that regard with the current existing situation in Sri Lanka. So that is it. And yes. Yeah, and one main point I've written down from what Fadil said was the problem created by 8 billion people cannot be solved by 100 odd governments around the world. which made real sense to me. This was a bit attractive, the phrase I could notice in your speech, and I wish this had come in your introduction part, Fadil. If it was there in the introduction, it could have made more impact. You get me right? It came in the middle, and it could have been gone unnoticed by certain judges, because it was almost the end of your speech when you came up with this point, if I'm not wrong. So make sure you prioritize the interesting things to come up in your introduction part. Yes, that's it from me for all your individual speeches. And as you all know, summary speeches in a debate are not usually evaluated. But again, I'm here to repeat, and I'm here to emphasize that you cannot introduce any new points in your summary debate. The main objective of summary debate is to tell which points are still standing for your team and why you win the debate, right? Keep that in your mind, because in your summary speeches these aspects were not considered, right? So that is that. And now, are you all ready for the verdict? Ready? Okay. So overall, in this debate today, there were no, uh, I mean, there were not many points. If I am to be very honest, it was fine. It is good, not a problem at all. Because you all gave more emphasis even on one single point to make sure that convinces the judge. It is fine. So the thing is, since the proportion of rebuttals were different in both the teams, proposition actually had an advantage of having 4 points standing until the final speaker of the team opposition came up with his rebuttals, right? So with the rebuttals Fadil came up with, I was able to cut down one particular point of proposition which talked about the power of the government. But, anyways, at the end of the day, the points in total which were standing for team proposition was three. That is, one about government having the leadership responsibility, government having the international networks and connection, and government being responsible because it does more pollution. And now coming to opposition, there were only 2 points standing. One is individuals taking action can create change, and number two is government cannot exist if people do not support. So by that means, team proposition wins the debate today. Appreciations, team. But anyways, job well done. A good attempt. So this is the very first time we practiced points of information on an FB live debate. So I hope in future we can practice more on it. It will make you a confident speaker in general, not only a confident debater, but it will make you a confident speaker whenever and wherever you go and speak to an audience. Because it is unsure and not at all certain that everyone will accept your points uh, on the go, right? So people will have questions to ask, people will have clarifications to be made. So when those things come up in your way, you should be able to handle it confidently. So points of information is a great way to practice that. So hope that goes well with you all. And I think if you have no further concerns about what we had today, we can wrap up this session. And before that, can I have one or two reflections about the overall session you all have today? How do you feel right now? Are you expecting to participate in more sessions like this in future? If one or two of you can come up with any of your views, with that we can wrap up the session.
Uh,
Yes, go ahead, Father.
so I feel like that even though I did good today, I feel that I have more to improve on. So I'm planning to join like this workshop again in the future because I feel that I'm still not perfect and I don't want to lose consistency of what I'm doing right now. Because if I lose consistency, then there's surely I wouldn't have any chance in participating in any debate again. So plus this debate actually gave me like practice, like learn about what POIs are, because I've never heard what a POI is. I have seen them in debates, but I've never done that. So that was a very good experience. Like tried that today, and in the future, hopefully, I will surely be joining.
Thank you, Father. Savinu, did you have any other things to add? I saw your hand
Uh,
raising.
yes, miss. As you said today, there were some mistakes in me too. So, in order to overcome those mistakes, I also think that I also think that I need to attend to this program again. And today's debate was great, and I had a lot of fun, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Savinu. So I think with that we can wrap up the session. So thank you so much, guys. And I hope to meet you all in another session in future at Pufferfish. And I do not forget to thank Miss Azmia Zalmi here, who has been evaluating the debate very carefully. Thank you so much for being here, Azmia. I hope you had fun as well. So see you guys. Have a great night. Take care.